Okay, we are live. It's 8 o'clock. Welcome to our monthly VIP podcast with the legend that is Mike Naylor. If you if you could give us a quick intro on your background, mate, and what you're kind of up to at the moment, and we've got basically a mix of coaches, physios, doctors, sort of watching, listening. So sell yourself, mate.
No pressure. So I don't know about legends, but I've been working in performance nutrition for around 20 years. I started working mostly in the Olympic world, so with the English Institute of Sport, where I was lucky to work with some of the best Olympians and Paralympians in the world. Some incredible experiences. Was head of nutrition at the Rio Olympics. So yeah, really good time in Brazil there. And then worked in two sports which I truly love in football and rugby for over a decade as well. So was very lucky to work at England Rugby with both the men's and women's teams across a decade, across one World Cup with the women and two World Cups with the men. And then in football, many years at Southampton FC, recently joined Chelsea, which is a really exciting new role. And during that time, also working at England football across four major tournaments, so two European Championships and two World Cups, as well as some time in F1 in that time with McLaren as well. So yeah, quite an array of different experiences, working with some really cool athletes, and yeah, very lucky to do some really cool stuff in that time.
Yeah, you've had a very amazing career, mate. It's pretty broad as well. Um,
I guess I'll start by asking Mike, what sport haven't you worked in?
I don't know. You got me. You tested me there because even some of the sports I think of straight away, like tennis, I've worked with individual tennis players throughout the time,
you've worked with quite a few
there's
fighters as well, right?
and
Boxers.
not so many fighters actually. A few, but not
Yeah,
not loads.
yeah.
So definitely an area that I've been really interested in, but I haven't worked with many, but a few individuals along the way. But yeah, I love working in different sports. I love the different challenges. I love working with people to get me thinking differently, really understand the demands of what they're trying to do from a performance perspective, and then work to create nutrition solutions. So it's what excites me working with different sports. You know, Rob, as well. I've been lucky enough to work with some of the best poker players in the world, and people are like, how do you support a poker player with nutrition? But
Mhm.
once you get into the detail of it, it becomes so fascinating that it becomes such a good different project. So really lucky to work with so many different people.
Amazing. I'll jump straight in with a question actually, because poker is all about mental endurance, and I guess in elite sport as well, especially like F1 and every sport, you need a huge amount of cognitive focus. What would be your kind of philosophy on optimizing the mind and cognitive endurance and cognitive sharpness with athletes?
I've probably come back to a place of not trying to overcomplicate it and come back to doing the fundamentals really well. I think there's been phases where there's been so much emphasis on things like nootropics and different magic bullets throughout the times, and some which may work and some where there's some emerging evidence. You just look at creatine right now; it's becoming a big hit again, hitting the headlines for not its performance
Yeah,
and repeated sprint ability, but what it can do to support the brain. But before all of these things, it's getting the fundamentals right and doing them well consistently. I think that's where you get the biggest gains. You get the biggest gains from moving, from getting your sleep all right, getting the fundamentals of your nutrition right, not over relying on sugar, over relying on caffeine, which so many people do. They forget about the fundamentals, the solid fundamentals, and try and go for all these different fancy things. So getting the fundamentals right is always my key place to start. And when I reflect over the years, it's probably where we've had the biggest results as well. Something like supporting someone with a really simple hydration strategy can be so key to supporting them in
mm,
the biggest occasions, where it can easily be seen as not sexy enough, not worth worrying about, and it's doing these things really well.
I suppose then just to add on to that then, or build on that. how do you sell the fundamentals when they're not considered sexy? When someone comes to you and they're asking about all the kind of the extras, if you like, the creatine, the supplementation, all these things, and they're just, in your view, just getting the fundamentals wrong. How do you go about coaching someone or advising someone on that? Where do you start? Broad question, I know.
I think sometimes it becomes how you brand it. I was chatting with on a different podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about how we brand projects, especially in the football world. I know we was looking at fueling for Matchday -1 before games, and it was quite a famous project that we done at England football, where players were bored around the message around eating 6 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram body weight on the Matchday -1. So we set up this Project 6G, where we'd actually do what we called the fuel gap analysis, where we would actually measure what they was having on the Matchday -1, and then showing them like they might have been having, I don't know, 3-4 grams per kilogram of body weight of carbs, and then we'd say, right, this is what 6 grams of carbs looks like per kilogram of body weight. And all of a sudden it was like this really clicky, right, Project 6G, I want to eat 6 grams per kilogram of body weight. And it become a big project around doing these fuel gap analysis, eating this amount of carbs. This is going to help me when we're playing the next day to support my endurance, repeated sprint ability, all of these different things. And I probably take that mindset into a lot of things around, actually individualizing data, showing people, showing where there's a gap, showing where there's potential, and making it specific in that way. So yeah, definitely over the times, it's like how do you market these things, brand these things, and make them really relevant for that individual to hook them in and engage in it, so they're just not jumping from product to product or whatever it might be to try and make a difference.
Cool. I'll ask another question if I can, Rob. So you obviously work, as I know, because we manage some people together, some GPOP, general populace individuals. What differences do you find working with general populace, like people that maybe aren't so clued up on nutrition, and the professional athletes? Or do you find that professional athletes suffer from the same kind of gaps in their knowledge as general populace?
I think it's so individual. Sometimes I'm working with people in the clinic who they come in with a really high level of knowledge, and the conversations that you're having sometimes get onto like master's degree level conversations. And sometimes you even find that in sport. So, in rugby, working in rugby, I'd be working with sometimes players who were studying medicine, and the level of the conversation you would have would be so high. So I definitely feel that although a lot of athletes are exposed to it a lot more, they also have so many different things going on around their performance. And we talk a lot around, the cognitive load of players. A player can walk into an environment, an athlete can walk into an environment, then you've got a psychologist wanting to get messages across, a physiologist, strength and conditioning coach, biomechanist, all of these different people. So messages can get lost. So we sometimes take for granted that we think that they know everything they need to know about nutrition, or we think, oh, this is so basic, they know it, when they don't often know it. So I've probably come away from even, comparing knowledge of individuals in sport, different individuals from across different sports or who don't play sport, and just taking them as an individual, what they come in front of me with, what questions they have, what are they trying to achieve, what knowledge they have, what have they read. Sometimes it can be really hard when you have someone who comes in who's well read, but they're well read on probably not good material, and then you're trying to undo so many things, which sometimes becomes really, really harder as well. So it's a balance, and I think it's always an individual situation that you're in that you've got to work with.
Yeah, I always find with nutrition it's a really hard one because it's ever evolving, and what we know now maybe wasn't the status quo 10 years ago, and yet some people still come in with that kind of archaic belief system, and like whatever it is, like maybe Atkins diet, or low fat diets, low carb diets. And I find diet, more than most things, is the hardest thing to shift someone's belief on, because they're so hardwired into believing it.
Yeah, it can be so hardwired, and I've had worked with athletes in the past, and these were like World Cup winning rugby players at the time, and they come in with beliefs and like, this is what I do, this is what I've always done, and you're like, oh, it doesn't really relate to any of the science, and but you're a World Cup winner. How do I now try and bring these two bits together and navigate through these different situations? And yeah, you're right. There's people who have beliefs around, what they've always done, and all of these different things. I remember once I was doing a bit of a project, and I think I presented it somewhere where I was just like branding different people's personalities. You have, people who are really old school, have an old school way of thinking, and that's what they stick to. So then it becomes around behavior change around that. You have some people who are not interested in nutrition, they don't really know about it, but it might be really important to get a message across. Then you have others who might be really curious with loads of questions, and it all comes back to behavior change. And a really cool bit of work that a researcher, Megan Bentley, done, and another researcher, Dan Martin, had done across Leeds Beckett University and Liverpool John Moores, has been around behavior change in nutrition, have built around a psychological model called the Combi model, which is all about a person's capability, opportunity, and motivation. So what do they know about nutrition, for instance? What is their opportunity to get access to good food? And then what is their motivation to change their behavior? And this become different models like this of actually psychology and nutrition coming closer together has been fundamental to help change people's beliefs, be able to reverse engineer from whatever they're trying to achieve to change their nutrition in a bit more of a deliberate and specific way.
It's interesting there because it's something me and Rob are big believers in. Like, since we've graduated with all our hard skills, I'm just going to see if I can draw a parallel to nutrition. We found that actually there's a huge degree of soft skills and psychology, as it were, that is part of our day-to-day practice. How much from your traditional training, your nutritional training, how much were you taught about psychology there, or is it something that you've kind of learned and realize it's quite a big facet of working with people?
So at university, I would have done a psychology module, and it would have been, very, very entry level, and it wouldn't have equipped me coming into the elite sporting world, especially. So when I finished uni, I was very lucky to get on a UK sport fast track practitioner program, which literally its whole purpose was to take people in who've got the technical knowledge, so for instance got a master's, but give them the non-technical skills or the craft skills which you need to survive in the elite world working with athletes. So for instance, it would have been there would have been bits around motivation, dealing with conflict, behavior change, all of these different areas like which you're learning about over a period of time, different experiences that you put into to fast track some of those non-technical skills. So yeah, I felt I was very lucky to be in a situation that actually really focused on non-technical skills. And at the English Institute of Sport, it was a big part of all of our CPD and learning opportunities that we had especially over the last decade, was how do you really develop those craft skills to actually apply that technical knowledge to make a difference on the ground, which is key. If you can't communicate the message, then you're not going to make a difference. So it becomes so pivotal to get that bit right.
We've got a question from one of our physios and coaches, Nick, as well, and I suppose I'll draw a bit more from it. He was asking about the core fundamentals that you tend to start with, say if you're meeting someone for the first time who doesn't have a good grasp of nutrition, whether they're an athlete or not. But then as a side point, I would say as coaches or practitioners, when we're dealing with people that maybe don't have access to nutrition, need a little bit of support around an injury, what should we have at the forefront of our mind when we're talking about basic education? How we giving them some knowledge around how they're fueling and preparing for sessions?
Yeah, my first message is always to everyone around this, like knowing your limits, knowing to when to refer to a nutritionist or a dietitian. It becomes a key part of my practice. Is I have so many cases which I can't even deal with as a nutritionist. I need to refer to a dietitian to build on from there. But when I'm dealing with people first thing in front of me, it's probably similar to most disciplines where I'm trying to build rapport with clients and trying to build a base that we can connect from and we can build on and we can build from there, developing trust, and then really trying to understand what they're trying to achieve. And I think once I start to get an understanding of what they're trying to achieve, I can start to reverse engineer from there around what might make a difference. So, for instance, you put it in really simple situation, they might want to increase muscle mass, and then from there I'll start building from that goal. Listen to them, what they do already, what they might have tried, and then you're finding different things around energy balance, making sure that they're consuming enough calories to support the exercise they're doing, the training that they're doing to achieve that goal. Then it might be looking at their protein intake. Are they consuming enough protein? Are they consuming protein at the right time to have the biggest impact around their training, support their recovery, support their muscle development? And then building on things around their vegetable intake, fruit intake, vitamins, minerals, the carbohydrates to fuel their training, recover, all of these different things. So it's probably a piece where you're reverse engineering from what they want to achieve and then coming in with the solid fundamentals first, which usually end up working around energy intake, your macronutrient intake and your micronutrient intake and hydration. It becomes the building blocks can be narrowed down to that simple, and then you might go into the details a little bit more specifically.
How much of, you mentioned a goal that we all see, whether that's with men or women, around lean muscle mass, and if we isolate it, just say to the chest, we say guy wants to put on some mass on his chest, you question him about his training, his nutrition. We know that you need both. If you want to put muscle on, you've got to get enough stimulus, but you also need enough protein and enough energy. You need to be in a slight surplus. If you're in a deficit, your protein's low, you can do all the press ups in the world, you're probably not going to create new tissue. So one question I have is, if someone comes in and they're struggling to put muscle mass on, how much are you actually sort of delving into their training as well? So if they say to you, look, I do chest once a week, I do 3 sets, and you probably know that it's far too little a dose, would you sort of educate them around kind of hypertrophy as well, and sort of overlap that with the protein targets?
I try not to too much, and I think I feel quite lucky that nearly everyone that I work with works with a strength coach or a personal trainer or someone in that way. So I'm a big believer in interdisciplinary practice where you would have an understanding of what the person is trying to achieve and the team around them, and working together as a team, understanding the skill sets of each member of the team to refer and develop in that way. I mean, if it's one of my friends in the pub, then I love my strength training, I love my conditioning, and I love to get stuck in chatting about it. But I'm probably still stuck in the GBT world and going 10 sets of 10, which I'm sure you will tell me is the wrong thing to do for a lot of clients. So, which is exactly why I stay in my lane and stick to protein, fueling recommendations, maybe different supplements to try and help it, rather than giving advice, which can probably be outdated and probably something that I picked up from Men's Health 10 years ago, and might have worked for me at some point. So it's definitely something I would rein in myself.
If we stay on this awesome topic, and there's a lots of controversy around what works, what doesn't work. Like, you can take stuff like Tonkat Ali that people are saying it bumps testosterone levels, it helps. Does it really? Maybe not. I don't know. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. But when we're talking about trying to create as anabolic environment as possible without taking steroids, without taking banned substances, what are your core sort of principles to that? If you've got a period with an athlete where the goal is to throw on as much timber as possible, get really strong, I'd love to hear how you sort of approach that strategically.
Yeah, I think I stepped away from a lot of, like in rugby back in the day, would see loads of people coming in with like D-aspartic acid and loads of other different things to try and boost their testosterone. And I remember, I think it was a professor from Liverpool, John Moores, and Christian Cook, who used to do a lot of research in this area many years ago. And they used to give an analogy of like you can take all these things and they reduce it by a small amount, but then if you watched a series of Braveheart before you went and done a training session, and it actually boosted it that much more than any of these supplements, which put it into perspective for me around coming back to the fundamentals, getting your sleep right, getting your warm up right. You guys probably know more different things. I don't know. I see all these different priming exercises, med ball slams, and all of these different things, which are probably a lot more effective than any supplement out there that's going to make a difference. So I would, definitely come back to using the expertise around the team to get a bigger effect than a supplement. And I would go back to the fundamentals about being in a rested state, fueling well. Probably the one which has got the most evidence around it to support in situations like that is probably caffeine, for instance, for increasing arousal before a session to be able to make a difference in that way. So I would probably, go back to doing the basics well, using things like caffeine strategically at the right time. If things like, we know that creatine has got a lot of research behind it, so it can become a great supplement during this period of time. Other people like to try and apply different things. Even I've seen people using beta-alanine, and they stick beta-alanine in a lot of pre-trainers because it gives a little tingle, gives people a buzz. But the reality of it is that you need to take 5 grams or so a day for a period around 2 to 3, even 4 weeks before you start seeing a difference, and you start seeing an increase in carnosine stores, which is gonna help. So it's all of these different things which there's so much out there. I think there's so many people looking for the magic bullet to increase that anabolic environment, as you call it.
Well, you're saying that it doesn't exist. We're not going to take a natural tablet overnight and get jacked, unfortunately.
Consistency in training, consistency in energy intake, consistency in protein, and then all of your different bits around your sleep and recovery becomes so key.
And consistently watching Braveheart before you train is what I'm taking off. You inadvertently refer to it as a fundamental.
Yeah, there we go. It must be. I remember. I think it was Graham Close stood up at the front of a conference doing a Braveheart impression as he was doing it. So that's probably why it's always stuck in my mind.
Rob's going to walk in the gym tomorrow to train, just all glued up on his face.
I think there might have actually been a research paper on giving a team machine guns or some sort of guns, or taking to a shooting range before doing some sort of activity as well.
Completely right.
There's been some different studies done over the time as well.
Sorry.
Go on.
I was just going to say a quick story where one of our colleagues, as well, James Collins, the strength coach, not the nutritionist, but he just finished his PhD. Congratulations, James, in testosterone. He did his thesis in it, and he told me that do you know what the best natural way to increase testosterone is when you're working out? Have a guess. To see an attractive opposite sex, or same sex if you're homosexual, but to see someone attractive. So now suddenly all those like workouts I did in Germany in lockdown, where I'm in these gyms with like black and white bums everywhere, I'm like, okay, the Germans might be sort of onto something there with that weird like soft porn in the background of the gym.
What type of gyms were you hanging out in?
Yeah,
I just took what I could find. Listen, times were tough.
5-minute workout and then pop into the sauna. Mike, put these ones to rest then, because there's often get asked it. There's obviously there's no straight answer. How many grams of protein per pound body weight? And then after that one, creatine. What's the dosage that you recommend to people?
Protein wise, I always seem to be going around 2 grams per kilogram of body weight now. Like sometimes it'll be a little bit higher, but never really over 2.2 grams per kilogram. I don't often recommend, I don't often have many clients going below 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight these days. So I think it's probably anywhere between 1.5 to 2.2, probably because I'm working with a lot of athletes and a lot of people that want to put on muscle or at least maintain muscle. It's actually, they're probably on their lower protein intake when they're really trying to ramp up carbohydrates before events to get enough in for, marathon endurance events, or trying to fuel for football games which require extra time. It becomes actually when to get enough carbs in, sometimes reducing the protein a little bit is quite a tactical way to do it. But yeah, it's within those ranges, and I think 2 is probably it has become quite standard. Which I know when it's compared to what's recommended for the general public, which I don't, is it still 0.8? It still might be. Is obviously significantly higher than that. But I'd like to think there's a lot of research, especially in the athletic population, which is supporting the around 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. Maybe I'm not very good at maths, so I need to keep it really simple and times it by 2.
Yeah.
It works. And then what about creatine? So there's all this, do you need a loading phase? You get 5 grams, you take 10 grams for a week and then drop to 5 grams. What do you need to take over 3 grams because of the absorption? Where do you stand on that?
I think still do the loading phase with a lot of athletes around the 20 grams a day for a period of time, and then say five days, and then drop to 5 grams daily for a period of time. So usually working with athletes in seasons, but a lot of athletes who just prefer the lower dose as well. So 5 grams daily. They might come off it for a bit of time here and there, but taking that 5 grams daily has been shown to have effect as well. So they're probably the 2 strategies. I don't often drop as low as 3 grams. I'm not aware of any adverse effects in healthy populations of 5 grams a day.
And then what do you say about, do you give advice on, like, throughout your daily cycle? Do you take it in mornings, evenings? Because I think there's a bunch of research to say it disturbs sleep, isn't it? Is that making that?
That it does, or
it does.
Doesn't. I don't know. I think I might have read something on that quite a long time ago, but I haven't experienced it so much in practice. Probably because I end up taking it with athletes around their training sessions, which are usually morning-based training sessions rather than evening training sessions. And the absorption of creatine is really high. I know some people still take it with carbohydrates, or taking it after training. You've got increased blood flow, increased insulin uptake. So you've got all of these different things. But I feel that it's a really absorbable supplement, and the timing of it doesn't matter too much. But my advice would probably be, if you do find it affecting your sleep, then take it earlier on in the day, and around your training sessions with food maybe might be a good strategy to move it forward.
Cool.
We've got another question from Jack, a strength and conditioning coach, around actually an interesting topic at the moment, which I'm sure you're starting to come across. And I was also going to touch on this area of kind of people being in essentially a deficit. So the question is, on consistent energy intake with people using weight loss drugs, is there any supplementation or additional behaviors you'd recommend for people who aren't getting enough energy in, as a way to sort of manage their day-to-day energy levels of training, with all these GLP-1s coming out and everything?
Yeah, so Ozempic's not a topic that I'm an expert in, and I'd always get medical advice on it. But I feel getting enough energy into people is key for many other things, such as bone health, for instance, and trying to get calories in different ways. Drinks, I don't know the ins and outs of the research, whether people still struggle to get enough calories in through drinks when they're using such drugs. But it's I don't know. Probably I don't know enough about the long-term effects of it, and I'm sure there's going to be some downsides to being on a really severe energy restriction, because you don't feel like eating for such a long period of time. And bone health, immune function are 2 that I'm probably thinking that stand out to me, which would probably need to be right and approach right to to make sure you're getting enough nutrients in to support, the fundamental functions of our body. So yeah, that's probably a starting point to answering your question there.
Yeah. Are you coming across it more regularly? I certainly am in my practice. I know you were more biased in the athletic populace, so maybe less common. Are you finding there's an overlap?
I've come across it a couple of times, so not loads, not very frequently, and I think I'm probably have some clients coming to me before they want to try and do everything they can from a nutrition standpoint first before they start considering it. And sometimes it does become a psychological piece for them as well, and they want to work on things around behavior change, around discipline, trying to help them to support them. Sometimes it's just helping them with accountability to support them getting these pieces right, to create an energy deficit without taking drugs. And I think that becomes part of my role when I'm working with these people, to try and help them do it in a way without drugs. And then if they were using Ozempic or stuff, then I would probably collaborate with other people who are experts in that field as well, to make sure that I'm doing what I can from a nutritionist to support them from all of the other things that might create a too big of an energy deficit for a longer period of time, which could have other detrimental health issues.
For the clients that are particularly overweight, sort of borderline obese or obese, that they don't want to go down that route, you come across them in your practice potentially just as a private client from the general pop. I've found personally, not always, but probably more often than not, that a lot of these clients struggle genetically as well to lose the weight. It takes them a long time, even though they are trying nutrition strategies. A lot of the time they're probably not able to train enough because of their lifestyle. It's a tricky one, and I think we've all had that patient that has tried desperately lots of different things to lose weight over a long period of time. They get frustrated. Any specific things you focus on with this type of client? Anything that you find that's a bit different outside the norm that you found has been quite effective for working with this type of individual?
I think the ones that I've had success with are probably the ones that come with consistency, and I think it's that if there's anything genetic, then it's usually a doctor or a medic that's going to figure that out a long time before what I would. But for me, it is people being consistent, adhering to things for a decent amount of time, and I don't think you can beat that. Discipline is a real thing. It's real, and it's people fitting these things into their lifestyle. We're in a world and in environments where we've got everything against us. We've got different advertisements. We've got going to a supermarket. All of these things, people trying to make us make the wrong decisions in terms of our health. So I really do think it's a hard world to be in to do it, and discipline is real, and we need to. We need to stay on track with things, and clients that really want to go with it. I find we get results, and I think there's nothing too different around that than helping them find a way to create a sustainable energy deficit for a long enough period of time. And it's very rare that there's actually something genetic that's the problem, and if it is, that's a medical thing that needs to get sorted there. And I think it's I'm probably in an environment as well where people aren't getting results and they don't really want to buy into it, and they don't have the discipline to do it. They probably stop coming to see me after a few months anyway. So I'll probably lose them through that journey, where I get it might be different for trainers who they might come back and continuously see. But I've had some just fantastic, unbelievable results, which have been so rewarding that people, sometimes are willing to go on a 2-year journey. And I think it's so refreshing, so rewarding. People want to give it a really good crack. They want to change their life around, and they really go after it. And there's nothing better than helping someone in that situation. when they just go all out for it, for their health, for their future, for their children, or whatever their purpose is. And I think that is probably a fundamental message as well, where you actually understand what someone's purpose is. You go to that conversation with them and they've truly got something to anchor back to, that they want to be able to play with their grandchildren in 20 years' time. And that's their goal. It's so powerful, it's so meaningful to them. And they keep going back to it. That can make such a big difference to keep their motivation at the hardest of times and the short-term decisions they need to make.
I love that you brought that up, because we talk about that in the course quite a bit. And yeah, I think it can be sometimes challenging when you're building rapport, you're building that relationship with a client, and they've come in with like a very scientific view. They want you to give them a strategy or support with working with their chef, whatever it is. But actually, there's some deeper stuff there that you want to kind of get your teeth into to drive that habit formation, drive that sort of passion and desire to stick to the plan. So I would ask you kind of, how do you kind of approach that? Do you have a sort of certain style of questions you like to ask? Do you like asking them at the start? Do you like kind of organically just feeling when they come in? Like, you know, how quickly do you get into people's identity, purpose, etc. when you meet them?
I like to be organic and I like to be authentic in the way that I work. And you know, some of my clients say, I'm a young lad from, well, not young anymore, but from Essex, and people don't. I'm not sometimes the nutritionist they expect to see when they rock up to Harley Street. So sometimes even that works in a favour, because people can relate in different ways, and it's being authentic, coming up with the questions at the right time, and truly care. And I think if you're passionate and you want to make a difference, and I'm in this job because I care around people. I want to see people do well. I want to see people perform well. I want to make a difference to people's lives. And I think if you're coming with a purpose that's so powerful for why you do something, it organically encourages others to be the same, and tell you things and give you real reasons, give you an understanding of their why, their purpose, what they're trying to do. And then I think once you can start authentically having those conversations, it becomes so much more powerful to work together. And it takes time. It's not, something that you can usually get out in, the first session. Sometimes it might take, 3, 4, 5 sessions. But I think once you get there, it becomes, truly easier to make a difference. And, I've had clients that might be 5 sessions along, and they're like, I wish I told you this at the start, and this is why I'm doing it, or this is what it means, or, they might reveal something that's just so powerful to unlock, to help a connection, to help an understanding that you can move forward with.
Love it.
Do you find that when you start working with general populace individuals rather than the athletic population, do you find you get people that are just starting their journey? Because obviously to engage with you, they're going to have had to kind of gone through a bit of pre-contemplation and make the decision to work with someone. Is it that they tried and failed? Is it that they just want to make a start supported by someone from the word go? Is it a mix? What do you find the commonalities are?
I think I have so many people come in based on word of mouth recommendations, either a friend that's been in, or they've been working with a trainer and they've recommended or told a story, and there'll usually be some sort of common connection in that way, or someone might come with something really specific, like they want to run their first marathon and they just really don't know where to start, so they come with a purpose. So I think when someone comes and they put a performance purpose on the table, that becomes quite an easy place to work from a technical perspective, to build on that, on what we can do and how we can make a difference. Whereas if someone comes in and they're just like, I've been told I need to come and speak to you because you've done this with so and so, it becomes a little bit harder, and you've got to navigate through it, understand what they really want, and it can take a little bit more time. And sometimes our clients that come in and they might say, I think I know everything, I think I'm doing everything right, but I just want to sense check it, just want to check this, check that, which can reveal some other different things that they are doing right, or they could do better, or it can send off the consultation or the meeting in so many different ways. So I think, I think there's such a wide range of different places that people are coming in from, and where their thought process is in the time. But it's always nice when you have someone come in with with a goal, with a purpose, and then a bit of clarity of what they want to go after. But it's not always the case. Sometimes it's really complex to help navigate that.
Slight tangent. Obviously, Instagram, social media platforms are giving people a platform to spread knowledge, and nutrition is, if I may be so bold, a grey area in what people feel that they can give advice. So I personally find there's a lot of people on Instagram that are using it as a platform, giving nutritional advice that, through my eyes, is potentially harmful. Obviously, you've got some great people out there as well. How do you feel about people doing that, I suppose? How do you feel that, because it's your realm, where do you kind of feel the line should be drawn? Or how do you feel about people engaging with individuals like that, mentioning no names?
I remember when Twitter first took off. So what was this? When you had a lot of nutritionists come on Twitter, maybe 18, 19 years ago. And there's, it was probably at the time where carbs, you wouldn't want to touch a carb. They were seen as that evil on Twitter. And at the time I was like, oh, this is a nightmare, because, I'm trying to help support people to fuel their training, fuel their exercise, activity, their health, everything. And then all of a sudden you can't open up Twitter without, don't need carbohydrates. They're going to do this, going to do that. It's a nightmare. And I had to fight with it for a little while, especially when I was working with athletes preparing for Olympic Games, and I was like, right, I'm not going to see this as a threat anymore. What I'm going to see this as is people wanting to engage in nutrition. So at least they would come and talk to me. There'd be some athletes who wouldn't necessarily talk to me before, but now they'd read something on Twitter, all of a sudden they wanted to talk because they'd seen something. It was controversial, it was different, and it created a conversation. And I thought, actually, this is a really good opportunity. Although they're spreading incorrect advice for the situation and for what they're in, at least it's creating a conversation. And now I've got an opportunity to build on the conversation, have a debate with them, and talk about it, get across some science and get across some stuff. And so many times, and in fact, nearly every time, people would leave actually, oh, that's really interesting. That's different. Why didn't I think about it? Now I get it. So I think creating a conversation was actually quite a positive piece when I was actually able to challenge people on what they'd read online.
Yeah, what a good way of looking at it. I just sit there. I just get angry. It's so much more productive.
Yeah, I had to just flip it, because I was probably in that boat for too long, and it was I was like, I need to do something. So I can't change what they're doing, so I need to change the way that I'm approaching it to try and counteract it.
It's just so funny because I find it such it's an emotional subject, right? There's so many layers to nutrition, weight, aesthetics, performance, all these things. I just find that some people, as with everything, right, they really get their hooks into these people that want something to follow with such polarized views. And I suppose we always have to carry the torch of, the unsexy things, the consistency, the basics, the fundamentals. And it's interesting how much traction these people get when they have one message and one message only, and have that like the panacea to everything. So it's really interesting. I find that there's very little policing that goes on in Instagram, and you get echo chambers around these subjects, and it's very hard going back to changing people's beliefs. When they come to us, it's very, very hard. If they're intelligent people that have heard these messages again and again and again, it's hard to change those beliefs, from my point of view anyway.
Yeah, and it can be, and it's usually short-lived. And I think sometimes I'm like accepting, right, I'm going to need to ride a little bit of a wave here, but it's yeah, there was a point where I thought about getting into social media a little bit. I just thought this is going to take up all my life because I'm just going to
Yeah.
be going for it, going for it,
It's a
going for it,
minefield.
and I wasn't ready for it, and yeah, I like to switch off at the end of the day and relax, not open the laptop having a fight with someone on Twitter about carbohydrate intake or low fat v high fat diets.
Yeah, it is such a minefield. I mean, as you say, I think you can draw positives and negatives from certain aspects. If you look at people like Dave Asprey, Gary Brecker, don't get me started on him, but these guys have actually, and Brian Johnson, you can talk about him as well. These people have really plucked up like interest in the general pop around health and well-being, but as Doug alluded to, I think there's a massive like risk with a lot of it. Like it's really excessive with someone like Brian Johnson. It's obviously in his case it's unique what he's doing. He's got unlimited resources, but it's just unhealthy in my opinion, and it is my opinion, but it's too much. It's excessive, and the whole thing of biohacking and doing all these little things day to day that ultimately a lot of the time the people aren't getting the core things right. One of my friends who's an amazing coach, he always used the analogy of like buying the most beautiful central heating system for your house in the winter. It's like the best of the range, but in your loft you leave the window wide open. Like if you take in nootropics and wearing blue light blockers and putting a red light on your shoulder because you think it might help, and then you're getting 4 hours sleep and under fueling, then yeah, it's not effective. But
I think probably one of the best things I've done was put in a 15-minute limit on my social media a day, and time that I've sat down wherever I'm in the bathroom or whatever, sat down, done a bit of scrolling, watched some Paul Gascoigne highlights from 1990. My 15 minutes has run out, and I can crack on with my day. So
and you stay disciplined to that. That's good. I mean, I can't say I do that, but I try to do an hour. But that's impressive, mate. Well done.
Talking about fundamentals, right? So this is a tricky question. So you've sat in the middle of a arena, Mike. You've got 1,000 people from all different walks of life. Obviously, they're all going to have their nuances, different performance, different goals, different whatever. If you had to, on one slideshow, give them the five fundamentals of nutrition, what would they be? What would apply to almost everyone in that stadium?
I think sometimes you have to step back a little bit from the typical nutrition fundamentals and be, right, one, have a purpose, understand your purpose and your why and what you're going after. Because I think without having direction and understanding of what you're going after, it can go off in too many different directions. And then planning and preparation. I don't think like there's any shortcuts for getting your planning and preparation right. I think people that meal prep, batch cook their food are a lot more successful. They're leaving less things to chance. Like they know what they're going to eat the next day before it's that day. They're not leaving to chance what's available in the supermarkets or what's available at a service station or an airport or whatever. It's actually they're planning, they're prepping, they're organising, they've thought about what they're going to eat based on their purpose and what they're trying to achieve. So they're prepped, they know what they're going after. I think then you're probably moving into some of the more technical pieces around getting your energy balance right. For so many people, it's important getting enough energy or creating that surplus or deficit, depending on what your goal is. Then you're probably building on from your protein, making sure you're getting enough protein in, which comes back a lot of the time to how prepared you are. Are you prepared to get enough protein in? Especially if you're vegan, vegetarian or something in this situation, then you definitely need to be prepared because you're going to really struggle to be hitting some of the protein targets and guidelines that we talked about before. And then I'd probably, something that I've learned from the sporting world in particular is that the likes of around carbohydrate periodization, depending on the amount of activity, the exercise that you're doing, making sure that's specific to what you're doing. So, if you're not doing anything a day, you're not having loads of carbohydrates that are unneeded. But then at the same time, if you're training hard, you're doing endurance training, then making sure you're fueling that appropriately. and then it probably being deliberate around other bits like your micronutrient, your vitamin intake. I would, but for most people, recommend a screening at least once, 2 times, 3 times a year of some of your key different markers. For instance, things like your vitamin D, your iron markers. Started looking at omega-3, 6 ratio, different fatty acid profiles now with a lot more people. I think it's important for people to be aware of these things as well to make sure they're getting those bits of their nutrition right. And don't underestimate the likes of getting your hydration right. So I think that's 5 there. You asked for 5, didn't you? That's probably five key things.
Yeah, that was great. That's such a good answer because
technical.
Yeah, that was perfect. I mean, you start with the core of, that you say, have your identity, have your purpose and your goals, but then figure out how you're going to be organized. Because for me, nutrition, but like from a personal perspective, it was always about that. Like the times where I was more stressed, working long hours, running around, my nutrition dives so quickly, badly.
Yeah.
You know, you grab quick food, you spend more money on worse food. On that area of sort of organization and environment as well for people, like how do you kind of, I guess we could touch a little bit on like meal prep versus, you know, some of the delivery companies, and let's say you've got a client that has a sort of moderate budget, they're not like multi-millionaire, but they can invest into their health and their nutrition, you know, sort of what, in this current age we're in where we can access a lot of things, what do you tend to do? Does it depend on how much free time they've got, how much cooking they can do? How do you sort of approach that area? Because that is ultimately a massive thing, isn't it? It's huge.
First of all, I've got a conflict of interest there because I've got got shares in a chef recruitment company.
I didn't know if you were going to mention that.
Have I just dropped that in? Yeah. Plugging Hawk Performance. So I think it's But for me, I was working with a poker player actually, and he's probably the person who's framed this the best to me, because you've got poker players are so often talking about the probability of success. So whether it's a turn of the card, you know, what is the probability of success on the next card, their bet size, everything else. And he framed it in a way, right, my probability of success of me eating well tomorrow is so much higher if I plan it 2 days or at least 1 day in advance, because I've planned and prepped, I know what I'm doing, so my probability of success is a lot higher. If I all of a sudden I don't do that, I don't prep my food, or my chef doesn't prep my food, then all of a sudden I'm relying on what I can do in the time I've got available. So I might have a meeting that overruns, a game that overruns, and all of a sudden I've just got to shoot down to the supermarket. I might not actually have time to cook or prepare it. And then if I don't get that right, all of a sudden, you know, I'm stuck eating a fast food or eating a Deliveroo without control. So this piece around giving yourself the biggest probability of success becomes so key, and comes back to the determining and planning and preparation. And then it comes around your lifestyle. You know, for me, nutrition and cooking is such a big energy giver that there's nothing like on my Sundays, I love having the football F1 on in the background, and I'll quite happily cook all my meals from Sunday to Wednesday, and just enjoy, you know, food that I've prepared in advance. I might just leave the fish aside and just cook that last minute. So I've got fresh fish, but I've got good bases of good vegetable based dishes, curries, tray bakes, all of these different things. I've always got food available. Like tonight, I finished work late, come back like six o'clock. I know I was preparing for this, but I knew I looked in the fridge and there was like 3 or 4 different dishes that I can have, which are all really nice and really enjoyable. So that me actually really enjoying the Sunday afternoons, cooking, sport on, family, running around, sometimes a glass of Malbec, is quite a nice way for me to spend a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Whereas for some people that might not be the case, and then that might be, they might look towards meal prep because it helps them in that situation to do it, or other people might want a chef in their house, or a chef drops food off to their house. I think there's so many different solutions now to help people in different situations, you know, whether it's meal prep, or whether it's a chef, or whether it's finding a way to enjoy it yourself. My partner's a psychologist, and she talks about these mindful moments, and I don't know, sometimes I think she's tricking me because she's like, you can make cleaning such a mindful moment. You can do your washing up. You're not looking at the screen. You're not worrying about work. You're enjoying these mindful moments. So maybe she's tricked me into thinking I love cooking that much.
Clever.
That I find it such a mindful moment. So
you have been manipulated, my friend.
Did you
can I try it?
did you always love cooking, or is that something you've kind of trained yourself to embrace?
Like I haven't always really enjoyed it. At university, I wouldn't say that I really enjoyed cooking. I always loved nutrition, but I was probably a person that would have 2 protein shakes a day. I'd never go a day without having my creatine. And glutamine was all the rage when I was at uni, and I would get that in, and I would I'd eat okayish, but it wasn't great because I wasn't into my cooking as much. But once I got into my cooking, I spent some time with some really good chefs, really learned some solid fundamentals and actually enjoyed it. That made a really big difference to me, and I think it's a skill that if you have and you enjoy it, it's pivotal to support journeys.
Nice, love that.
Can I ask just a couple of really practical questions? One thing that I struggle with, protein intake. We've spoken about it. If someone is struggling with protein intake, well, quite often females, they don't like taking protein shakes. What do you kind of lean towards to help someone meet their quotient a day?
I like the way you put help to meet their quotation now, because usually the protein source is in their food. I think what we're probably learning from the research now is that amount of protein is more important than fat. I mean, it used to be people looking at these, 30 grams, 3, 4, 5 times a day, whereas total amount is probably a little bit more important based on where the research currently is. So, consuming enough in your meals. I mean, if you eat meat and you eat, chicken, fish, it's actually, can be quite easy to, to knock up 60, 70, 80 grams over a couple of meals. And then, you throw in a snack like Greek yogurt. I find is such a good way to be another booster to support people's protein intake. Some Greek yogurt, some berries, a little bit of honey if they want to make it a little bit sweeter, or even putting something like that into a smoothie, like a Greek yogurt based smoothie, can become such an easy way to get your protein intake up as well. So I think, if you're having, 3 or at least 2 solid meals with a decent amount of protein in, you can usually get the solid foundations in there, and then building on that with like the Greek yogurt can be a really good little a little extra hit to make that happen, or even like a quick omelette. It's so easy just to I think people time themselves doing omelettes in 90 seconds, where you can just scramble 2-3 eggs together, time you put a few vegetables inside it, a little bit of cheese, mushrooms, whatever, then all of a sudden you're finding another 20 grams of protein quite quickly.
And third of all, what were you leaning towards then?
It's a lot harder. And I think it comes back to being prepared, and I think that's where the likes of being prepared with things like an example earlier that I talked about, like more vegan based curries, more vegan based tray bakes. There's a cookbook that I really love it's by Anita Bean for the vegan athletes, and it's such a great vegan cookbook with so many different ideas, snacks for different things. You can make little, like chickpea patties, like little burgers, keep them, store them in your fridge. I think having high protein things that's available, and I think when I'm working with vegan athletes, vegan people, clients, I'd always go for it. Preparation is key, otherwise it becomes really hard. And that's why I think, batch cooking these different foods and having them available when you need it is key, because they're not so readily available. Yeah, if you don't want to rely on a lot of pea protein products and things like this. So preparation becomes so key for vegans. I think that's why after Game Changers, we had a massive influx of vegans. Yeah. But then when people realised how hard it was to maintain and to get protein recommendations, it soon dropped off very, very, very quickly.
Amazing. we've just got 20 seconds left. So what I'll do, if it's okay with you, Mike, is I'll share your details with all of the coaches and practitioners, so if they want to refer to you or have questions, they've got your contact. And where can the guys follow? Or I'll share. It's going to finish actually now, so I'll share your Instagram there as well, and then everyone will be able to see you. Cool. Thanks, everyone. All right, I think probably I'm going to stop that. If you can stay on, Mike,